you for being here. Here in Patrón.
I guess let's jump into it. So here we are at the iconic Copper Bar at La Casona at Hacienda Patrón. We've got a group of folks from around the United States here to talk about one of our favorite topics, tequila. I thought the most equitable way to introduce you all would be geographically. So I'm going to start on the West Coast with Leslie Kirchhoff. She hails from the Midwest originally via New York to LA, where she runs a creative content studio. Our paths first crossed virtually via Disco Cubes, but when I was doing my research on you, I looked at Disco Cubes, and the website says a project of Leslie Kirchhoff. So there's a whole lot more to Leslie's identity than just Disco Cubes. She is, I think, the first ice cube innovator that I've ever met, but she's also a photographer, an art director, a creative content producer, a DJ, travels around the world, but she kind of landed onto the specialty ice business in 2017, launching Disco Cubes in 2020, published her first book, Disco Cube Cocktails, and also a product for consumers called Disco Inferno, which I can't wait to hear a little bit more about. You can find her at Disco Cubes. He comes from California, hailing from San Jose, but now finds himself in Austin, Texas, which is also where I live. I crossed paths with Bob Wolter at a tequila event that neither he nor I can actually pinpoint which one it was. If you were drinking tequila in the enthusiast community a decade or more ago in Austin, that was a small world, so you were bound to cross paths with each other. Bob started a blog back when blogs were a thing called Tequila Tracker, and was really kind of one of the early online voices paying attention to what was happening in the craft tequila movement. I would argue before people even knew that there was such a thing as a craft tequila movement. Bob, to me, is kind of a Library of Congress function in this group today, really having like kind of an awesome historical context for the category that a lot of folks who are speaking and writing and nobody blogs anymore, but Instagrams about tequila. A lot of folks don't have that context, so I'm looking forward to hearing some of your backstory, Bob. Hailing from the gastronomical capital of North Florida, Jacksonville, Nick Hogan wears many hats, some of which he probably manufactures himself. I met Nick I think at Camp Runamuck. I don't even remember. I've seen you at so many events, I had to remind myself where you actually reside. Nick's a bartender. He's been a bartending, competitor bartender, operator, now mostly known as a content creator, a merch producer, his longtime voice of support and a resource for the sobriety in the hospitality industry. I associate you so much with the merch and meme enterprise known as Mover and Shaker that I also forget you're a brand ambassador for Angel's Envy from Jacksonville, Florida, Nick Hogan. And finally, and certainly not least, hailing from Australia via London, New York, and I don't even know where else. I arrived on you arrived on my radar through your most recent post in New York, and then in Miami. But Naren Young's bartender started at what I have heard is an illegally early age of mixology, operator. Well-known home cook, a food and beverage journalist. I can speak from personal observation that he is an athlete of the table. You can see him on the speaker circuit at conferences around the world, really. You have to catch him if you can at Fork and Shaker, but now you can find him when he's not traveling the globe at Sweet Liberty or Medium Cool in Miami. I'm David Allen. I work as the Education and Advocacy Director for Patrón. I grew up in Austin, Texas. I think like a lot of my colleagues in the industry and probably most of us here, I took a very meandering path through all parts of the front and back of the house, all positions high and low, including culinary school, a many-year stint in the specialty coffee industry. I decided in my mid to late 20s that I was going to go to college. And I, upon graduating with a degree in government, realized that I already had a successful career in the hospitality industry. And around that time, the cocktail movement was really taking off and starting to find anchors like not on the coast. And being in Austin and an early kind of spokesperson for that, I started a blog back in 2007 called Tipsy Texan, which turned into a business and opened a lot of restaurants and bars. And dabbled also in cocktail journalism for several different magazines and wrote a book in 2013 called Tipsy Texan. And then fatefully in 2015, basically my biggest customer for Tipsy Texan gave me a job. And here I am, all these years later, at Patrón. I'm digging into y'all's various diverse backstories. I realized that we could probably do very long interviews with everybody on a variety of topics, but I think we should stick to, or at least kick off with, the thing that brought us all here together today. And so if you can remember, and if it's a decent enough story to tell in polite company, I would like everyone to share their personal tequila origin story. Does anybody remember what that was? Your first acquaintance with tequila, and maybe a little bit of how your relationship with tequila evolved over the years, such that you would land here today talking about the subject at Hacienda Patrón.
I don't know. I remember. I mean, I think the first time I started getting like really diving deep into it was meeting Julio Bermejo when I first moved to the States in 2006. I kind of landed in San Francisco as just like the first place to go. I was on my way with dreams to move to New York, which I did, but
this is Julio Bermejo, Tommy's Bar.
Correct, yeah. Sorry, I should elaborate there. Yeah, the kind of like one of the tequila gods of the time before, Thomas Estes, while he was still alive, and a few others. But Angus Winchester, one of the kind of luminaries of the cocktail, would say, listen, you got to go to this place, Tommy's. It's a bit of a pilgrimage for a lot of people. This guy Julio is just an incredible host. It's very hospitable. His family's been in this business for a long time. His, I guess, fiance at the time was also married, has a familial connection to it through La Tenure and those kind of brands. But, so I made the pilgrimage out to Richmond, kind of not exactly the easiest place to get to on one of those sketchy buses, and landed at Tommy's, and he was extremely welcoming. And over the last kind of...
How long ago was this?
This is 2006.
Okay, well.
Yeah, so I'd already been drinking decent tequila back in Australia when I was bartending there, but I just didn't have that knowledge that he would help provide, I guess. So started there, was just blown away by his just warmth and hospitality, and was just willing to bring out all of these just random brands that I'd never heard of, and just, here, try this, try that. And that was kind of where I got hooked. And from there, long story short, I've been lucky to come down here a lot with him and others, including yourself. And just kind of, I guess, dive deeper into it and diversify my knowledge and just be like, this is just a world, not just this place, but just the whole history of it, and just being immersed in it. I think it's very, probably more special to me than other spirits. I'm a bit of a student of all of them, but I think for me, tequila is the one that I kind of have always gravitated towards, because there's just so much to it.
It's interesting you bring up Julio Bermejo, because I think that's a common thread in a lot of people's stories. If you were visiting him in 2006, their family restaurant was already, 50 years old?
Opened in, I think, 1965, I think.
Yeah, it cannot be overstated how influential this place is. And when you say Julio was, kind of the first person to impart that knowledge upon you, he's also one of the only people who I think was really situated to, in those days. He was way, way, way ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Tommy's Margarita has a long history with him. I think he was pretty much the first bar to be only pouring 100% agave tequila, which was quite a statement at the time when people were drinking Cuervo Gold and many others. So I think he was a real pioneer and, evangelist, that helped pave the way for many of us to kind of follow his lead and go, okay, after meeting him, we all just had this thirst for knowledge about how do we know more, and how can we go to how can we go to Mexico, and how can we go to these distilleries, and how can we just really kind of go to the source and really understand what this is all about.
Unless we get stuck only on his kind of knowledge and expertise, he also has the most warmth and hospitality of pretty much anybody I've ever met.
Yeah,
it does not surprise me that you showed up at the gate with him and knocked, and they actually let him in, because who would possibly say no to Julio?
Yeah,
really extraordinary individual. Yeah. Does anybody else remember their first or very early taste of tequila, and what path that led them on?
Mine was early years of college, and doing Jose Cuervo tequila poppers. One or two of those nights with friends was enough, and didn't touch it really again until late 99, early 2000, I want to say, give or take. And it was Patrón, actually, that got me back into, made tequila a viable option. I was a Jack and Coke drinker pretty much everywhere I went, at home, at bars, wherever it was. And a coworker from Austin was coming out when I was still living in San Jose for project we were on at work, and brought a bottle of Patrón Silver one trip for our after meeting get together. And I basically said, no, I don't do tequila. I said, no, trust me, you need to try this. And had a sip, and it's like, wait a minute, this is not what I remember. And that kind of opened that door. And for the next 5 years or so, started trying other brands. Kind of Patrón was the go-to in that period, but that opened that door to okay, well, what's this one? Let me try that, and here's another one. Let me try that. And then with the rise of social media, I want to say 2007-ish, started seeing more other people that were kind of in that same place. Blue Agave group, for one, and that opened up the world of recommendations, if you will, from other people that had the knowledge.
What made you decide to commit yourself to basically the academic pursuit of this? And I mean, like, writing about it to create content for others to consume. Your shirt says tequilatracker.com. This is peak nerddom, Bob. You've got your blog name on your is embroidered on your shirt. This is a commitment. But how did you go from, like, whatever, consumer enthusiast? Because unlike really the rest of us, you don't actually work in this business. What made you go down that path? Because there wasn't really a lot of people doing that at that time, if I recall.
So, funny enough, my wife had a blog, and as a digital person at my 9 to 5, one of the things I needed to be able to talk about and recommend to our salespeople were the different platforms that were available at the time. And so she was on one blogging platform, and I thought, well, there's other ones. I need to know which one to recommend. So I thought, I'll do a blog. And I had really started getting into tequila a bit more in depth at that point. I thought, what are the stories behind these brands? And I didn't trust, and I still don't really trust my palate enough that I'm not an expert to be able to recommend and review tequila and say, this is what it tastes like. It's so subjective that why would you listen to me if your palate is different, right? So I went with the safer option and figured, let me learn the backstories of the brands and who was bringing them to market and do it more in that sense. And so that's kind of the direction I went. Picked a different platform just to try it, and kind of went from there. And then you said I wasn't really in the industry. I did do a 4-year stint as a brand ambassador for another brand, and that's when I stopped writing, just so there's no even appearance of conflict of interest. And I thought I'd get back to it. I stopped doing that in 2016, and I thought I'd start writing again. But by that point, it's like there's too many voices, too much out there. They don't need another. I
forgot about that chapter. Bob worked for a very legendary tequila maker, Herman Gonzalez, right? Yeah. Anybody else care to reveal the
I'll piggyback off
story of your
tequila? Piggyback off some of the stuff Bob said. I kind of had a similar background in that my drink tastes weren't, extraordinary in the early days. College, drank a ton of light beer. I wasn't even really a liquor drinker, so my intro to tequila was mixtos as well. And then my kind of first introduction to better spirits was through the craft cocktail world. Our bar was more focused on the cocktails than the name brand spirits. We were not known for being an agave bar. Being sober for 5 years, I think a lot of my experience with the brands and being able to convey these spirits to people, I rely heavily more on the stories, the families, the experiences I've had in those places. And I think even if you're drinking or not drinking as a bartender, I think those experiences kind of far more valuable than anything else anyways. If you can tell a compelling story to somebody about why they should be drinking a brand, I think it's, extremely beneficial.
Leslie, would you care to divulge?
Sure. I think I do remember my first tequila experience because I think it was in Mexico. I was on a family trip and had a tequila shot. But I think I just really liked the process of a tequila shot with salt and a lime. And it's fun that that's kind of one of the only ritualistic shots of alcohol, well, in a certain way.
Right, at least the most famous. Yeah.
Yeah, the most famous, and it just makes it into
Sorry
a
about
fun.
the tequila popper. Hasn't quite hit the mainstream.
No, it hasn't.
But I really ended up kind of like tequila became my main go-to spirit in college and beyond. And then one of my first jobs in New York actually was as a cocktail waitress at the top of the Standard Hotel at the Boom Boom Room.
Oh, cool.
And
We were talking about that place last night.
it was funny because I was actually hired as a hostess, but they accidentally put me in server training. And so I just went with the flow because I
Great.
knew that that was where you make a lot more money and have a lot more fun. They quickly realized within a couple of weeks that I was in the wrong, the wrong position. But in those couple of weeks, we had a lot of fun because during the slow times, one of the bar managers would kind of take down like beautiful bottles from the shelves, and we would do little tastings. And so we would get to know a lot of the things where he would be like, "Oh, one of our regulars always orders this, and like maybe you've never tried it." And so it was kind of the first time that I'd ever done a proper tasting back to back of different levels of different tequilas and other liquors. So I think that's kind of when I started to appreciate all of the different nuances of different types of liquors and tequilas.
That casual education process that you're talking about is really, I think, how most of us learned for a long time. There were not a ton of other resources for learning, like in any kind of like official or like, certified capacity. You basically, if someone that you worked with who knew more about it, then you had to take it off the bar and pour it for you.
Right, because you're not going to go buy 3 very expensive bottles and try them back to back when you're just starting out or if you don't know anything about them. So yeah, having like someone kind of guide you along the way was really nice.
I think it's interesting too, having it with like the lime and salt. When I first started drinking tequila, that's how you like took it to mask some of the flavors of these tequilas, right? And then it kind of, as people got to know it more, they'd be, especially in Australia, they'll call it like training wheels, like you don't know what you're talking, like. No professional ever has this. But then when I come to Mexico and go to these little cantinas, they always bring you a little like bowl of like little lime wedges and some salt. I'm like, hang on a second. If they're doing it here, there's got to be a reason for this.
Right.
So when I go back to somewhere like a bar and I go, oh, can I get a whatever, let's just say a Patrón Repo, and they go, oh, can I get some limes and salt? They're like, oh, roll my their eyes, this guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. And I'm like, well, have you been to Mexico and checked this out? Because it's kind of actually quite traditional down there. And I like that because it's kind of come full circle. Like,
you're right.
This is actually when you go to the place where something's created and there's a kind of like a tradition or a ritual around it, I think there's just a different appreciation for maybe why do they do this?
When she said it, I was thinking about it. It is crazy that we sort of celebrate this tradition or this technique that was engineered originally to sort of make the spirit more palatable. But the spirits have gotten better over the years. The consumer awareness and sophistication across the board, education has gotten better. And it's funny, I think there's something about the convert's zeal where, everyone, your stories are all very similar. Mine's the same. We started kind of in that sort of shot and lime and salt kind of thing. And then there was sort of like the backlash against that, and now it's sort of like the backlash against the backlash or whatever. And I think people ultimately are kind of going to the origin now and getting those true stories and realizing, okay, maybe I don't have to be so prescriptive about what people serve tequila with.
And back then too, it was more like you would lick this, salt, and you would slam this tequila and suck on the lime. And I was like, that's not really where it's gone now. It's like, I never shoot tequila anymore. I just like to sip on it, and maybe you put a touch of salt on your tongue or something like that. Or we had this one at Tequila Stuntman where you would like squeeze a lemon in your eye. Someone would snort the salt, and then
let's do that one after we do the
after the bottles on. Yeah. But it's, anyway, it's nice to see these kind of people understand the rituals of what happens down here. I think it's cool.
My at least first story I can remember involved a very poorly organized trip to Nuevo Laredo, is one of the border towns across the southern border of Texas, where like 18-year-olds go to drink and get into mischief. And so we go there. It's freezing cold. We had no idea what we're doing. This is pre-cell phone, pre-internet. It's the late 90s, whatever. And we're just like wandering around like tipsy gringos in Mexico. we had bought a bottle of and I'm sure we'll have to bleep that when we go to post-production on that. And we go to this cantina, and they were glad that we had brought this bottle because it was much better than anything they had. And that is not saying much if you're, if you've tasted that product and or have a recent memory of it. And I was going to go to the bathroom, and I couldn't find the light switch. So I just remember holding myself in the doorway and that swore me off of tequila for years. And
A lot of people.
in my current capacity, I have encountered, I used to spend a lot of time on this sort of food and wine festival type circuit, speaking to mostly consumer audiences. And I'd heard these stories so many times that I would actually start beginning my lecture by actually passing a mic in the audience, and I called it the best worst tequila story ever contest. And I would basically let audience volunteers tell me like their worst tequila story, and whoever had the best one, I would like sign my copy of my book and give it to them. And I just heard some doozies, just incredible stuff. The one that's most memorable involved a group of gals and a guy who had gone down to Mexico, and they're driving back to San Antonio, I think. And for whatever reason, a couple of them were in the back of the truck with no clothes on, as you do when you're driving back from Mexico. They get pulled over by highway patrol, and the only thing that the driver or whoever's in the cab can think of to give them to provide some cover is a giant sombrero that they had bought at like some gift shop. So here these two ladies hiding under a sombrero as they're getting like interrogated by highway patrol. And I asked the woman, I said, what? Please, like, these are horrible friends you're traveling with, but that's all they can give you. And she's like, it was my husband. He's right here. So, tequila
Sometimes it works out.
brings us together sometimes in unexpected
Sometimes
ways.
there's a silver lining at the end of it.
But one thing I've had to tell people is like, maybe it's time to give tequila another chance. Like maybe that was operator error. Maybe it wasn't tequila's fault. Maybe you overindulged, but for some reason people do have this like grudge that they hold against tequila based on those early experiences. Thankfully, we have come a long way from that. And I was actually half expecting someone in the group to tell me that their first tequila was like boutique tasting with Guillermo Salza Erickson or something, like, because we've been at this long enough that there are generations of tequila drinkers who actually never went through that phase. Sure. I have a question for you, Naren. Yeah. I had a neighbor who was an Australian, he was like a Air Force pilot or something, a helicopter pilot in Antarctica, but he lived in Texas when he wasn't doing that. And he told me, and maybe I wonder if this is an actual ritual or if this is like Bob's tequila popper story where it only had a very narrow range of experience. It was cinnamon and orange. It was the first time I've heard that before, but is that actually an Australian thing to your knowledge, or is that?
I don't know where it started, but it's definitely popular down there for sure. Yeah, I don't know where it started or what bar, and I feel like I was probably at the vanguard of where the cocktail scene was starting down there, probably in like the late, kind of 90s, roughly that. So we started around then, but I couldn't pinpoint it to a person. But I think it was probably just another way to maybe soften some of the, the kind of harsh tequilas at the time. And, like you said, we're not here to rag on them.
The reason why I wanted to bring it up is because I think that actually is a lovely way to drink tequila.
Yeah.
Like I think it's like sucking on a lime and salt is a kind of like horrific way to drink tequila.
Right.
But I actually find the Repo cinnamon orange thing kind of.
I think they all have a place if they're done in quite a subtle way, like not grab an entire lime wedge and just kind of like, I literally just put it to my tongue and then put it down, maybe just a dab of salt. I don't do this all the time, but, and then this orange and cinnamon, same thing, just a tiny bit, but, if you find some of those tequilas.
He called them tequila slammers. He said that.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Does that check out? Maybe.
Yeah, but I think that, there's a lot of nuances of sometimes orange and cinnamon in some of those more aged tequilas that we know anyway. So I think that kind of synergy makes sense if you think about it.
Synergy is actually a new product that we're working on.
Okay.
Since you touched on being at the kind of vanguard of cocktail trends in Australia at that time, I think I want to use that as a way to jump into our next topic, because places that you've worked at just in the time that I've known who you were are so kind of at the cutting edge that they're not just at the front or on trend, but in a lot of ways I think creating or driving trends. Nick, you're basically a satirist at this point, and in order to satire something, you have to know it at such a deep, like subcutaneous level. Let's talk about trends in tequila. We've talked about the dark ages of the salt and lime mixto era. I would like to hear from you all about kind of what you're seeing, whether it's in your establishments, what you're seeing online. Nick, I think I would start with you because you're so at like paying so much attention to the trends because you actually are critiquing trends and trend pieces. So what are you seeing out there? What's popping up?
I figured this would come in this conversation, but not this early. Yeah, I think with Mover and Shaker.
We've even worked together on a few
we may
tequila
have
satire pieces.
Behind the curtain, like Wizard of Oz. Yeah, I think Mover and Shaker is kind of like almost a mirror, like a reflection of the industry. So it's a lot of what other people are seeing, and I'm kind of that.
But with like a fun house element.
Yeah, I kind of put my spin on it, but I'm taking what people are sending, and we're having a lot of fun with it. Obviously, celebrity tequila is a huge thing that. It's been maybe like 3-4 years of kind of riffing on that trope, but
it's a bottomless source
it's a bottomless
content, I think.
But I think it's easy when there's a new one every 3-4 months.
Hanging fruit.
Yeah, exactly. I know it's almost too easy at this point that I don't try to harp on it too much, but I think you can kind of go back on our conversation earlier where, is it necessarily a bad thing? No, but I think is that brand putting in the due diligence with our community and creating a product with community in mind. So at the end of the day, that's kind of, what the criticism is on the subject, if that makes sense.
Leslie, what's crossing your paths in your travels and in your trade?
I guess I've been I love craft cocktails and really interesting flavors. So I feel like it's been fun to see how people are using it with different flavors at different cocktail bars. And then also on the opposite end, just like the rise of just people drinking tequila soda, which I think is interesting. I think that's a lot of people's go-to drinks and it forever will be. But yeah, I think it really is gaining in popularity because it is in itself, like the category is so wide where it can fit into something and almost disappear in a way, or it can be the star of a drink.
I have to be honest, I do drink tequila soda sometimes at an airport bar. That might be the most reliably good drink. Honestly, one of the first places where I thought, oh, this is happening was at Sweet Liberty. I spend a lot of time at Sweet Liberty when I'm in Miami. I work for Bacardi, and that's sort of like might as well be one of our offices. It's our office on Miami Beach. And I've stood at that bar before. I like that little spot down kind of right when you walk in the door, and had round after round after round of people walking up and either ordering tequila soda or calling for a specific tequila and soda.
Yeah.
How long has that been going on? And where does it stop?
Good question. I think it's been going on for probably 3 to 4 years, I would say. But it's really kind of, as Leslie said, kind of just taken on a world, kind of life of its own, that drink. It's just something so simple and refreshing, still get that kick of alcohol that you don't get in, say, a vodka soda, but, you can taste it. But, in Miami, I'll speak on behalf of that, like tequila is just king now. You know what I mean? Like it was vodka for a long time. Obviously, we have a lot of rum connection just because of our population and where we are. So that's still popular, but tequila is just, we can't even, just keep up. Now we've gone to probably 50 or 60 brands at Sweet Liberty, and we're not even like a tequila bar.
I don't think of Sweet as a tequila bar.
No, not at all.
I think of it as a cocktail bar. That's, in a way, I was almost sort of surprised because there's a few drinks that I absolutely adore, and I'm surprised like at this place where you can have like an exquisite cocktail, everyone's getting a tequila soda. Yeah,
for sure. And we obviously the celebrity brands and stuff like you said, which I have fairly strong opinions about, but I think that there's just, that's kind of, I don't really carry many, or I don't think almost any at our bars. But I think that those are much more popular, I guess, in the nightclub kind of scene, as opposed to the kind of the craft cocktail bars you would see around town. I think that they have their place, I guess, just not as much in our bar. We're trying to have a kind of a mix of some well-known brands like this and some small brands, so we can kind of, softly educate people on, maybe some lights and marks of Patrón they've never heard of, or some tiny distilleries they've probably certainly never heard of. So I think to have that, that balance between those two worlds, at least for me, I think is a nice way to kind of introduce people to some kind of, take them down a path that they may not have explored before.
And besides just tequila soda and tequila booming in general, are there any sort of like more like micro trends you see in tequila cocktails specifically, that stand out to you? Or is there anything that you're pushing?
It's probably an obvious one to everyone, but the Paloma is just everywhere now, which I'm not against. I think I was talking to one of the people on this trip the other day, and I think just saying tequila and grapefruit is just like a match made in heaven, however you twist it. So we kind of always have a Paloma variation on our menu, whether it's a fancy Paloma or topped with sparkling grapefruit and champagne or whatever. And, obviously margaritas are still huge. So I'm seeing tequila martinis pop up here and there. I think there's one here on the menu.
For sure.
There was one at a bar in Mexico City I went to Tlacan, which I think was either a tequila or a mezcal martini they had. So I'm sort of seeing that around, a little bit. But those are probably the three.
I'm kind of glad for the tequila martini having a moment, and that drink that you mentioned is my only surviving menu drink of any project I've ever worked on. That's still it's been over 10 years since I worked at a bar or restaurant, so most of those places are
This is your drink?
closed or the menu changed. When many years ago we were early in my career at Patrón, 2015 or 16. They were looking for a cocktail to sell Grand Patrón Platinum in high-end steakhouses, basically, and kind of sushi, what we now call vibe dining, but we didn't really have that term then. And so I made a drink that I called the Platinum Club Martini, and it was 2 ounces of Grand Patrón Platinum, 3/4 of an ounce of Bianco Vermouth, and then a zested but not dropped lemon, and then a shaved cucumber thing on it. And miraculously, I worked on the opening menu here, but this has been 7 years now, and they used El Cielo in it now instead of Platinum, but somehow that drink survives.
They give you credit on the menu?
No, I don't. I would never ask for that. This is all the credit I'm asking for.
Also, I wanted to say that being in California, I feel like every restaurant has a margarita on the menu, and it is just such a nice blank canvas to highlight any seasonal flavors. Even if the bar isn't a craft cocktail bar, or maybe they don't have a crazy mixology team, I feel like it's a really easy way to showcase just seasonal flavors and do a little twist on something.
Since you brought it up, let's talk about the margarita. The margarita is not just the most famous tequila cocktail. It is like an ambassador for tequila. Anyone you talk to who is back in tequila 80s, 90s, or liquor stores or running bars and restaurants will tell you that that's how people got introduced to this cocktail. And then for lots and lots of people, that is the only way they know that cocktail. Naren brought up the Paloma. This is the more popular drink here. I haven't had a margarita since I've been here, but I've had several Palomas. That's the more common or popular Mexican tequila cocktail, and it's having a moment in the U.S. But I'm curious, what do you think is happening with the margarita in the United States? What's happening with it now, and what is the future of the margarita? Is the Paloma going to dethrone the margarita, or do you think the margarita is here to stay?
I think the margarita will always be a standard, but I think going back to the ranch water, tequila soda, even the Paloma, I think it's just a correlation between the rise of sparkling waters, LaCroix, all those spinoffs, and then also the skinny margarita, kind of joining this intersection of low calorie option for people. And I think as far as the tequila soda, I think bartenders want to push that because it's a drink or a cocktail that it really showcases the spirit. So you can really get the flavors from the different tequila that you're using. It's simple, which people like, and it's also low calorie. So it kind of hits this really nice intersection between what bartenders want to showcase and what the guest is looking for. It's just kind of, I think, an all-encompassing cultural symbiosis almost.
Well, I think that the skinny margarita is basically a Tommy's margarita, essentially, and which I think is now become, at least in the craft cocktail world, is kind of like the benchmark recipe now. You go to most cocktail bars, they'll kind of know what it is. I was even in bars recently in Australia where I was walking past pubs and they had specials in the window, and not even good bars, and that had Tommy's margarita. So it's definitely permeating its way around the world. you know, because I think that the one thing that I guess Julio first highlighted to me was when you have it with an agave nectar with agave spirit, you can actually taste the agave spirit come through a lot more than having it hidden with, you know, an orange liqueur and maybe some simple syrup or orange juice if you're a real weirdo. But you know, but I think that kind of again that kind of symbiosis of like agave nectar with it just makes sense to me at least, you know. And I think that now we're seeing Tommy's margaritas everywhere, and I think it's just such a refreshing recipe, my favorite drink, and I just think it's really crushable. And as Leslie said, it's like having this blank canvas, the margarita, is part of the reason I think it'll never go away. Like, you know, it just gives you so much creativity. I have one on every single menu I've probably ever done because it's always it's easily our top selling drink at medium cool by far.
It's interesting that it's interesting that you bring up the Tommy's margarita because it's one of those rare instances where a modern cocktail who's the living bartender who we've been talking about, who created it, is still around, and yet this drink has, in a lot of places in the world, eclipsed the classic formula so much. And I'm a big fan of both of these drinks. And when I want a classic margarita, that is what I want.
Sure, I agree.
And that when I will, and if I'm in certain places, like New York is one of those places, if you do not specify and re-clarify that you want a classic, you're going to get a Tommy's by default. A lot of places in Europe are like that.
Yeah.
It's really wild to see how that drink, and because you can pinpoint the evangelism for that drink to a couple people, like literally Julio, I would say probably Tomas, and
Dre Masso and Henry Besson, Phil Bailey, and a few of those kind of like early kind of tequila.
It's like a handful of,
and they were kind of each taking it to their own part of the world, and going, this is this recipe that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know if you see that popping up in Austin, or you see that kind of what's the benchmark there?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I am a booster for my hometown. I think, Nick, did you say ranch water?
Yeah, I did.
We'll get to that in just a second. Put a pin in ranch water. I believe that for the moment, the classic margarita is still sort of the predominant style in Austin. And what's interesting is Austin is one of those markets where Tex-Mex is the main cuisine. You know, barbecue and Tex-Mex is every other restaurant in town pretty much. So it's got to be one of the margarita-ist drinking town. Like San Antonio, Austin have to be some of the biggest margarita markets in the country. So it's still classic in Austin. Would you agree, Bob?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
The first time I ever had a Tommy's, I was managing a bar in Austin on Congress Avenue, 2009, I believe. And I forget the company, but it was a portfolio of brands that included Partita and like a Kubler. Do you remember this?
I remember Partita, but I don't remember the name of the actual
Jacques Zeidenhut.
Yeah, Jacques was there, yeah. Another great tequila evangelist.
Evangelist was coming in on to taste us on Partita, and he was with Pablo Moy, and they were in Austin. I think I get this right. And I had never knew the story of the Tommy's Margarita, and those guys both being from California and in the Tommy's homeland were just like, this is the drink. This is how you do it. And it's good.
Yeah.
I'm a fan.
Yeah.
So the margarita still has a future. We believe that it's not going anywhere.
I don't think so, especially right now with the rise of where tequila is at.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think right now you're seeing people going for some, especially in the club world, like some high-end ones, whether it's putting El Alto in there or another brand, or people gravitating towards Reposado, particularly in Miami, is probably what we're selling the most of right now. People are starting to use those more in margaritas as opposed to just blancos, which is probably where we all expect that drink to kind of at least start its life.
I think I believe this thing I'm about to say. The margarita, to Leslie's point, has more sort of creative potential. I think it's a more versatile drink than the Paloma. Not that there aren't cool Paloma twists, but grapefruit's a very dominating flavor, and I think it's hard to stray too far with Paloma. Margarita has like infinite variabilities. For years, we hosted an event called Margarita of the Year. There was a global kind of search for this year's new margarita, and I mean, I tasted dozens of just spectacular drinks that all still had this margarita DNA and architecture that was recognizable while also still showcasing, the bartender's talent. And people like Jose Luis Leon won that competition one year with this gorgeous celery margarita. Guillermo Fort, who was with Dr. Stravinsky at the time in Barcelona, had a margarita with thyme and honey in it that was just spectacular. I want to celebrate my hometown for a minute, thanks to Nick Hogan's prompting. The ranch water that to me is the drink in Austin. That if there's a second tequila cocktail, in the way that Tommy's is kind of like really kind of grown so popular, I would say in Austin it's the ranch water. So much so that it's kind of like, because Austin is a place in Texas that people like to travel to, especially Texans, and also tons of people from LA come to Austin to recreate or come to one of our festivals. I know that it is popping up around the country, and I've seen it in surprising places. I've worked like around the block from the bar that created it. Ranch 616 is where that drink originated. This drink is ubiquitous in Austin, and I've been in bars in Texas where there was literally a section on the menu called ranch waters, and like martinis or whatever. It's also a category of drink. Has this drink? I'm sure it's crossed your paths, but what's your kind of perception of it? And what is your what's it doing in places where you?
What is it exactly? Because I mean, I've heard of it obviously.
What's the
foundation?
That's a great start.
Funny you should ask, because I have a lot of opinions about this. At the home of the ranch water, which is called Ranch 616, they've been making this drink since the late 90s. Basically they would make a reposado margarita, like a 2-1-1 margarita in a Collins glass on the rocks, and then serve a Topo Chico on the side. So it's basically a kind of a stout traditional margarita, orange liqueur, not Tommy style, with a topo on the side. And as part of the service, the bartender would like kind of put a couple ounces on top of your thing, and then you would drink the cocktail. So it's like a sparkling margarita highball type thing. And then as you drank it, you would drink down the Topo Chico, because you would keep. So it was like a margarita highball that evolved into a tequila
Okay. So it's like a softer version in a way, I guess.
And so that's the drink, and it was served like that for ages. And over time, as it became more popular around Texas and around the country, now I see people literally taking a Topo Chico, pouring out a couple ounces, and putting like a half ounce or an ounce of lime, and then a shot of tequila in the Topo bottle and serving it. I see that in Dallas a lot, and then in a lot of markets. Because Topo Chico is so woven into the origin of that drink that there's a mural on the side of this bar, a Topo Chico mural on the side of this bar. To me, it's like an inextricable part of the drink. But in a lot of parts of the country, it is literally a very limey tequila soda. No liqueur, no sweetener, no nothing. It's completely.
That was my.
Okay, so it's just tequila, lime, and then.
I see this all the time. I would say this is, in fact, I fought it for a long time. Even on our own website, the ranch water recipe used to have the formula I just told you, but then over time I put optional on the orange liqueur, and then I eventually just took it off because I'm giving up the fight of trying to convince people that the ranch water is a specific thing, because in the popular imagination it has become basically a tequila soda, and the only difference is that instead of a lime garnish, it's like an ounce of lime juice, which that to me is not a very balanced drink.
That's what I know it as.
That's what you get it.
Yeah. So I didn't even know the origin of the margarita aspect.
It's so popular now that the origin's been kind of obscured.
Because I think one of the first times I had it in Texas was at San Antonio Cocktail Conference, and it was just a topo, lime wedge, and tequila.
Yeah.
So it's not actually a margarita in there. It's just tequila with lime juice, and then you just top it up yourself on the side.
It's literally a really limey tequila soda.
Okay.
And at least like what he's talking about had the Topo Chico, or some people have like Tehuacan or one of these other Mineragua, another kind of aggressively fizzy Mexican bubbly water. But a lot of times, literally, like if I went into a bar in New York, I would get, if they've heard of it at all, I would get it.
I'd
tequila soda with lime. Okay, so you say New York out of the
I worked in New York 15 years. I don't think I got asked for one once.
Yeah.
In any bar.
What about in Miami?
Nope.
Well, I actually think that maybe that's because it's something that is really thriving for home bartenders and parties.
Okay.
So I don't think it's something that I've really ever seen on many menus, or that I would ever really consider ordering at a bar, unless I was at maybe a dive bar where I didn't really trust their menu, or wasn't inspired by their menu, I guess. But I would definitely make it at home. I love tequila, and I love lime juice in general. So I love going over the top with lime juice. And I think it's for people who love lime.
Okay, I'm glad you said that.
Do they know what it is here?
Oh, I sure hope so.
I feel like I'm going to drink one of those, or a few.
Let's each order one and see what we get. Compare notes. I'm glad you mentioned the home bartender, because that is, for one thing, that is a lot of what's driving cocktail trends. There's this intersection between the industry, social media and online content and what brands do and what influencers do, and then what people are doing at home. And these things have this energy between them. I think we'll get to that in a second. I want to ask you a very specific question. Your ranch water formula, how would you disco cube a ranch water?
Well, it's actually the perfect
Use
drink
your name
for
as a
it.
verb.
Well, because obviously with the clear cubes and with the things inside it, you want a pretty clear drink. I think I actually did make a video for you guys, and I put little key lime slices inside spheres, and so I had like 4 tiny spheres in a Collins glass, and built it just straight in the glass, gave it a stir, and yeah, just simple.
I love it. That drink, besides the fact that I knew the man who created it, he unfortunately we lost him a couple years ago. But that drink, it made sense for the climate. It's very hot in Austin, and Ranch 616 is mostly a patio restaurant, and so you would get this drink. And what I loved about it is that it was sort of like No-Lo before No-Lo was a thing. I mean, this drink's 25 years old, because you would drink, it sort of forced you to drink an entire bottle of Topo Chico if you drank it that way, because you would just drink it down, and the drink would evolve as you drank it, which I think is kind of fun. You're hydrating as you're drinking it, you're filling up, But also, if you were on a different agenda, people in the know at that place you would drink half of your Topo Chico and then order another one and just use your Topo Chico to ranchify the other drink. Bob, where do you sit as an Austinite on the ranch water?
I was going to jump in and throw in the idea of both the trend comment earlier and specifically, I think, with ranch waters, the recent explosion of ready to drinks and how that's
interesting,
because that's the ready to drink, like the
RTDs.
canned ones.
Yeah.
There's so much.
Several brands already.
Yeah, and they're popping up all over Austin.
Yeah.
And a lot of Austin-based brands, from my understanding, and they're doing that with the canned margarita and the canned ranch water, and they all have their own little different twists on them on the flavor profiles, and I think that in a sense is potentially helping to dilute that original recipe even further. And as those spread out and become available in more places, obviously that's the perception of what everybody's going to assume they should taste like, knowing it's in a can rather than in a bar. But yeah, that's kind of when you're asking both trend and specifically for the ranch water, that was the first thing that popped into my mind. It was just that
It's so
explosion.
popular that brands are canning it.
Yeah.
I would have no problem drinking like a ranch water out of a can, as opposed to like if someone gave me I don't know. I'd be more or less inclined to try margarita. It was like, okay, where's this lime? How's it treated?
Stabilizers.
Right, but like I'll drink it ranch water out of a can.
I'm glad you said that, because actually being a professional bartender and working in this industry, there are very few RTDs in my life.
Me too.
But that is actually, there is a place for them, and essentially like some very simple highballs. Like for years coming to Mexico and getting the canned Jack and Coke or whatever, that makes sense in a can as an RTD, and I think ranch water does too. Bob has one of my favorite home bars anywhere in the United States. His Cantina is awesome, and he mentioned his wife earlier. Christina is an incredibly talented cook and a professional food stylist, but she is not a tequila drinker. So when you're at Bob's Cantina, you have both the pleasure of drinking tequila from Bob's extraordinary and long and deep collection of tequilas, but because she doesn't drink tequila, she's a whiskey drinker. You get kind of catering as well. And so we've had some pretty awesome tastings. What are the top 3 menu drinks at Bob's Cantina? And does your cantina have a real name? Is it just
not really an official name.
Bob's Cantina has a
Yeah, it's pretty good.
we'll work on a logo package for you.
Let's get a trademark for you.
When are we going to be in Austin again? We'll come.
Right. Well,
He needs an RTD of his drink.
Yeah.
You need a consultant.
One of them is definitely Paloma. That's probably my first thing I'm gonna pour. And we're lucky with, as you know, we have a grocery chain in Texas that they have their own line of Italian sodas, and so we'll take that. And instead of using, and I'll use those as the grapefruit rather than Squirt or one of the other brands, and that kind of adds a little twist to it to make it fun. My favorite's the blood orange.
Is it San Pellegrino ones?
No, they're not.
The store is called Central. I assume you're talking about Central Market.
HEB.
Yeah, HEB
Yeah.
Central Market.
Okay.
I would argue it's the best grocery store. It's a subject for another podcast, but it's the best grocery store in America.
Wow.
Hands down. And because of the work I do, I spend a lot of time in fancy grocery stores around this country, and I still believe Austin Central Market in Texas is
Yeah,
is
I
one of
would
the
agree.
best.
And then Tommy's is a staple. And then that's probably the main two. Anything else we're just playing around, and I wouldn't say we've repeated anything really after that.
I was in San Francisco a few years ago for an event, and I went to Tommy's with a guy who I was working on the event with. Julio was there, and he said, "Have I ever done that thing with you where I give you a Tommy's margarita with all of your products?" And I was like, A, no, that sounds amazing, and B, like all of our products, we make like 20 tequilas, and so he, here he comes with like a Tommy's with silver, and then a Tommy's with Repo, and then a Tommy's with añejo, and they just kept coming like rounds of kind of half margaritas, and then he started going deep, and he jumps into Roca, the Tahona only product that we used to make, and then he tells me that he's got a Roca single barrel, which I knew, or I forget how he described it, but he described something, it was a Piedra single barrel, basically. And he was describing something that I knew didn't exist. I work here, I know we didn't make it. I was wrong, because here he comes for I think their 50th anniversary. We did this crazy, like, 4-year extra añejo Roca bottling, basically, with Tommy's logo on the bottle.
That's
and so
awesome.
he brings me that mark. I mean, he not only had everything we'd ever made, but he had things we hadn't really made.
Right.
Because that's who he is. That's
Yeah.
what that place is all about.
Yeah.
And I think that, to talk about how the drink showcases the tequila, that exercise, which is his whatever psychological game that he's playing with you, it shows you how important that drink is and that formula to taste like 10 different tequila Tommy's, and the tequila shines through. Like maybe even is like elevated by it.
I was blown away when he first showed me that exercise. I was like, I was a bit skeptical. Then I was like, you can literally taste the difference in all of these, and it's kind of remarkable. And it's a real kind of a real lesson, like a real wake up call, I guess, to go, wow, I didn't even know this was like a possibility. Yeah, and the way he explains it is just done in such a very kind of, a way that makes sense. It doesn't kind of intimidate you. It's just like, okay, now I get it.
The Tommy's margarita, I think everybody knows, is tequila, lime, and agave nectar. But there's also two things that are specific to the formulation of the Tommy's margarita. If you're at Tommy's, and I've never really seen this anywhere in the world, it does not matter if he's making one margarita or he's at an event making 400 margaritas. The limes cut and squeezed a la minute, no exceptions.
Yep, never.
The drink will not be batched. The juice will not be pre-squozen, and he could probably do a whole seminar on why that's necessary.
And he travels with his own limes sometimes.
Brings the
Wow.
BYOL, and then he
Nice.
also BYOS, but because the shaker is not a cocktail shaker,
Right.
it's literally a blender pitcher.
Yep.
I think that's right.
Yep.
At least every time I've seen him, it's
Yep.
shaking in a blender pitcher.
Yeah. And he never does it with salt. I prefer mine with salt personally,
Okay.
which he'll make, obviously, but his theory is like it does overpower the rest of the thing, so he doesn't do it with salt, unless you ask, yeah.
Do you have something on that?
No, I think just going
Different Shaker is going to make a
Yeah.
branded blender
just
pitcher shaker.
no base to the blender. No, I think it just like from my experience, I think bartenders love the daiquiri so much that the Tommy's was like almost the handshake of when agave kind of overtook as like the most popular spirit. You just saw the Tommy's, fall in line with that as well.
Since we're talking about the Tommy's and we're talking about Ranch Water and also that great grocery store, we're talking about locality, regionality. There are very few places, I think, in the U.S. and very few like drink trends that still have. I think the culture sort of becomes homogenized over time, and I feel like there are very few things that you can pinpoint to a specific location or even a specific establishment like Ranch 616 or Tommy's. That it's exciting when you find one. It's exciting when you go to a place and there's still something that's like very distinct to that place. I'm curious if y'all have any examples from your either where you live or work or your travels of a drink that is very specific to a place, and also like no, not just a bar's signature drink, but like something that's like just kind of iconic to a location.
Wisconsin, being from Wisconsin there's a lot of drinking culture there. I think one of the things that I didn't even realize was so Wisconsin focused is when you order a Bloody Mary, first of all, you're going to get insane garnishes, usually like a cheese whip and a cheese curd and a pickle and maybe some sausage. I don't know.
Chicken.
Yeah, buffalo wing.
And then you'll always get a tiny beer chaser with it. And that's something that I've seen sometimes on a menu, and usually it means someone involved in a bar is from Wisconsin or something, but it's just a standard go-to in Wisconsin.
I've copied that before.
Yeah?
Yep.
Amazing.
I love it.
I love it.
And I've never been to Wisconsin, but when I heard about it, I was like, I love this idea.
Yeah.
Over the top.
Yeah.
Not the garnish part, but just I love the little
beer chaser.
I love the little beer chaser. I thought that was such a
That's pretty brilliant, and I think it
so perfect and so simple.
Right.
it
Because
captures another trend of mixología de Mexico, if you will, of Michelada or Chela.
Exactly. Like you kind of want something light and refreshing when you're having a Bloody Mary, which can be a little heavier.
Cuts the viscosity.
Yeah.
And also I like all of the bits, all the little. That's the rinsing of the ice, as the last, with the beer as the last sip.
Yeah.
So you just blew my mind a little bit because I did not think that's where you were going to go, and I almost name checked this drink because it is one of those. I thought you were going to talk about the Wisconsin Old Fashioned.
Oh, the Brandy Old Fashioned.
Brandy Old Fashioned.
Yes, that one definitely endures and will never go away. And it's hilarious to see different bars make it. But there's Brandy Old Fashioned Sweet, and I always grew up knowing that was my dad's go-to, which is I think just brandy, bitters, and 7-Up, and then Brandy Old Fashioned Sour. And it's wild how Wisconsinites just think that is a very great cocktail and how different it is from an actual old fashioned. It is. I honestly love it. I usually have one every year when I go home for 4th.
But I think also Wisconsin has managed to survive traditions that have been phased out in a lot of bars of the muddled orange, muddled cherry, kind of sugar pat, squirt of soda, that kind of stuff. Is I think I haven't spent nearly as much time in Wisconsin as I would like to, but I think they still make it. It's sort of it's a 50 or 60 year tradition of that drink, right?
Yes.
What else? Anybody? Is there anything in northern Florida that you would say is iconic?
I don't think so. Nothing off the top of my head. No. I think we had like a huge Moscow Mule kick, but that may just been the time and.
I think everybody did, but I want to know somewhere it's still.
It's still a popular drink.
Well, sure,
Yeah.
I mean, people still ask for it. I think it's a perfect combination of flavors.
Yeah.
People love.
That's a drink that I've come back around to. It was so popular for so long, and at a time when a lot of people in my generation were sort of getting out there, and I've certainly sold and served many mules. But it was so popular that I had a perception it can't be that great. But I actually have come back around.
I think it had like the peachy like glassware. People love that, and then I think it was a lot of like new startup craft distilleries that were creating they had to make a vodka and a gin to pay the bills. So I think that was kind of like their go-to push during that time era.
It's also also has like a foundation that is very versatile. You could throw in tequila, mezcal, whiskey, pisco, almost anything into that kind of that formula of spirit, lime, and ginger beer. I mean, who's not to love that? I mean, it's pretty refreshing. It's pretty easy to drink. I think in terms of signature drinks, like for us at Sweet Liberty, is probably the Piña Colada. I don't think anyone, comes through those doors without knowing now that's kind of like it's kind of one of the, I guess, benchmark recipes. And again, very versatile. I've made that at events with tequila and mezcal and bourbon and rum and all sorts of stuff. And whether it's when I'm in New York, obviously at Dante we had the Garibaldi, which has kind of taken on a life of its own. And, you see fluffy juice and grapefruit juice and all sorts of different juices around the world now, which is cool. So I think
in a way, it's sort of like in the same way that Tommy's Margarita has now transcended the person who created it, and a lot of the people who are serving or drinking that drink don't know that bar and don't know that individual who created it. And I think that's probably true now. Or at least we're on the way to that with the Garibaldi.
And all the travel I see popping up on menus all around the world, which is very cool.
People you've never met. Serving your technique.
Yeah. And I'm like, this is not fluffy enough.
Regional and local specific cocktails, Bob. What you got?
I'll throw one back again to Austin, and I'm sure this is one that you know very well. I think it was, and you could probably correct me if I'm wrong on the beginnings of it, but the Cedar Door and the Mexican Martini, and that's found on most Mexican restaurant menus now throughout Austin. But when I've traveled, it's not something that people are generally aware of, and the fact that you get the entire shaker with it
Yeah.
right? And it may just be perception, and it may feel like you're drinking more because the ice is melting as you're drinking, and you just kind of keep pouring out of the shaker into your glass. But presentation, and I think it's just a twist on a margarita.
I feel like I read about this week.
Yeah.
There's like a story on like punchdrink.com or something about regional cocktails, and I think there was like something about the Cedar or something.
Cedar Door.
Cedar Door. And I've heard about the Mexican martini, but I don't really know what.
I'm glad you brought it up
what that
because
is.
when I was early legal drinking age, and the Mexican martini, that was the thing. Every bar had it, and if you were at a bar with a good tequila selection, the menu would have like you would have silver repo añejo, and then it would have this column would be shot, margarita, Mexican martini. It was literally like the menu was priced that way, depending on how you ordered it: shot, margarita, or Mexican martini.
So what is it? Is it just like tequila in a martini, or?
So coming of age in Austin, that drink was everywhere. It was like every place I worked at, we carried it. Lo and behold, when I started to travel, and especially traveling for mixology work, surprise, surprise, that's just an Austin thing, and a little bit of like Central Texas, or you could find one in Austin or Dallas, San Antonio, or Houston. You will absolutely not find one in LA or San Diego. To answer
It's
your
like a
question,
dirty martini, right? With
so this is I wrote a piece for CondenastTraveler.com so long ago that website is no longer active, about the Mexican martini. They reached out to me because I was like local cocktail writer and wanted a history, and it was one of those things where I was so familiar with the drink that I'd never even like thought of the history. It just kind of in my mind existed since before time. So I went on the trail to find the origin of the Mexican martini, and I went to the Cedar Door because two bars claim parentage of this. The Cedar Door claims to have invented it, and another place called Trudy's, which is a local chain of like a couple few restaurants, and they sell tons of them. And the thing is, it's so popular that like brands have to create a POS thing that goes along with it, because you have to have this like cocktail shaker, sometimes with a screw-on thing, so customers don't dump it all over themselves. But it's basically a margarita with the shaker, and so it's really like a couple margaritas that you serve in a martini glass and pour. Usually they'll bring it to the table, set it down, pour the first one, and kind of set the shaker down. And it's an interactive cocktail. I mean, in a way, it was ahead of its time, because when I started doing research on this drink, what I learned is that it was like literally late 70s, early 80s at Cedar Door. There was this group of people who had like spent time in Mexico. There was the chef was from Mexico, and there was a woman named Claudia Alarcon, who's a local cocktail, or a really food historian, cocktail writer in Austin, and she's who I went to speak with about this. And she said, when I was 30 years ago, 20 years ago, my husband worked at the Cedar Door. We all started drinking this drink that we called the Mexican margarita. And if you think about it, what's a Mexican margarita? In that time period, everyone's drinking these giant mixto frozen kind of fern bar style margaritas with Lasco powdered mix and neon green colored and mixed tequila. And so they wanted to serve this like traditional margarita, a 3-ingredient sort of like Kentucky Club style margarita, which for ages, in all the books that you read, any cocktail book from like the 50s to the 90s, it's a 3-ingredient drink served in a stemware. It's only in more recent years that its identity changed, but historically that was the drink. It was a 3-ingredient drink served in basically a martini glass. And so they started serving a Mexican margarita as a way to differentiate from like the Texas margarita or whatever, the generic margarita. And it was just this kind of, it's what we would now know today as a classic margarita. Yeah. Because they were serving it in that little glass, Texans started calling it, who only knew that glass as one thing, started calling it, instead of Mexican margarita, they started calling it Mexican martini. Once people started calling it Mexican martini, they started taking, elements of martini service and putting it into this drink. So that's where the olive came from, and that's where the shaker came from. So now you're getting a martini, style cocktail glass with an up margarita in it, garnished with an olive. And then, of course, once the olive got in there, people started putting the brine in it, which is when it became a dirty margarita. And because of consumerism, the shaker just kept getting bigger. And you can't serve someone like 16 ounces of a traditional margarita responsibly. So then they started adding roses, lime, Sprite, orange juice, olive juice, all this stuff to kind of stretch out the volume of this drink. And so when I went to like interview that guy about the drink, he's making it for me, and it's got all this crap in it, all this stuff that I don't recognize as being in a margarita. but they had to. But don't get me wrong, I have consumed many of those in my life, and so that drink, and every place has its own way of doing it. But some places like Matzo Rancho is I think a great classic Tex-Mex restaurant in Austin. And when you order a Mexican martini there, you get a classic margarita in a shaker with a stemmed glass, olive garnish, but nothing else is in the drink except tequila, Cointreau, lime juice, a little bit of simple syrup.
And that's how it's made now.
That to me is a proper Mexican martini. And I actually, a lot of the olive is controversial to purists who are like cocktail purists. Like, why would you do that? And I'm like, nobody thinks salt is weird in a margarita. Yeah. So to me, an olive as a garnish
makes sense.
Serves that, like, provides the salinity to the drink. And I think it's actually quite lovely.
Same with like an apple.
And I don't like dirty martinis, but I'll drink in that kind of limited salinity. I think it's really nice.
Same with an Aperol Spritz. If you go to like Venice, they always serve it with an olive. That's because because they, so when we do it at my bars, people look at me like I'm crazy. I say, well, listen, if without sounding like too much of a snob, I just say, listen, this is traditionally how it's served in Venice because the salinity in the olive cuts through the sweetness in the Aperol. When I first said that, I'm like, okay, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So you more than anyone I know have truly properly traveled the globe in pursuit of cocktails and education about cocktails and all that. Is there anything maybe abroad that you've seen or elsewhere in the U.S. that we haven't yet touched on that's just a really big local drink that is huge in that place, like ubiquitous, like what Bob's talking about with the Mexican martini, but then outside of that place, nobody's ever heard of it?
Oh my God. I would have to think about it. I think that, I mean, if anything, we're seeing martinis come back in a lot of ways, but not through martinis, like actual real ones. And I love going to some of the hotel bars in London where those are just such an elegant experience. I think that's
extreme martini presentation in like high-end London hotel bars. I think is something that's not only there, but it's just kind of unique to there.
Right. Yeah. And even you're seeing it pop up in other countries. I was in Australia recently. They have one with an oyster, one with caviar, one with a crudité on the side. So similar to the to the Bloody Mary, we're starting to see this kind of like it kind of become this kind of a bit of a statement piece, I guess, or a ritual for a lot of bars. And I think that we're definitely seeing martinis come back in a lot of ways. And I'm a martini junkie, so I'm probably not the right person to ask, but I see that it's happening a lot, and I'm trying to push that myself.
You mentioned what I think is kind of generally known as the side serve. That's something that I first saw in London bars and really hasn't taken off in mainstream cocktail bars in the U.S. Do you see that coming?
Do you mean like the thing sitting in crushed
like
ice?
a little thing, or that too? What I was referencing is like a little plate of some little bite of something, or a coaster.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think with the rise of social media and like cocktail competitions and stuff, I think that we're starting to see a lot more of these kind of serving rituals come about. Some are very successful, and I think and make a lot of sense. Some are kind of a bit over the top and don't really make a lot of sense. I think, but I think especially like you said, social media has played such a big part. Home mixologists trying to like serving drinks at home with some food. I think all of that kind of coming together, can be quite successful. I think that for me, having a cocktail with a little bit of food is like a perfect kind of like combination. I think that cocktails in theory should go with a little bit of food, because obviously they're high proof spirits mostly. But I think that, I think that having that little...
The little nosh, realizing where we are, the little nosh with the drinks is actually something Mexico gets right.
I think
so about it. You sit down in a cantina and here comes a plate of like jicama.
And Italy.
Sure.
Yeah, and you go to any
potato
bar in Italy, no matter if it's a tiny little bodega kind of style thing or a 5-star hotel, they're always going to give you some free food, like a little snack of something, whether it's the high-end place, it might be a bunch of sandwiches, some place it might be a packet of Lay's chips, but it's always going to be something. And I think I love that ritual.
Smart.
And doing it here as well. Like we were at that cantina the other night, they brought over those little kind of like almost quesadilla taquitos things, and they brought over some like peanuts and some jicama and like you said, cucumber with some hot sauce. And I just love that whole ritual. I just think it's really cool,
and
interactive.
Sit there and have more cocktails.
Yeah.
I've heard a couple times, and I know you mentioned it, Naren, Reposado taking over in tequila. This is also something I would have said I didn't particularly say. If you'd asked me 7-8 years ago, I don't think I saw that coming. But now you can't escape it. Why? Like, to what extent, and why do you think that's happening? Where's it headed?
I mean, personally, I think it's just a little bit softer. I think that maybe the reason like a lot of these high-end celebrity tequilas have taken off because they have that big vanilla punch. Not that, say, something like a Patrón Repo is very like much more restrained. But I think just having that little tickle of oak or that little touch of like whether it's vanilla or butterscotch or whatever adjective you use to describe it, I think has helped people just really appreciate, and maybe a new drinker appreciate the category because it's just a little bit softer than, because most of us, have always known that Blancos and Platas are the ones that really taste like that real essence of agave, right? Which is what theory we want, but for some people that might be too strong. So I think having something that's a touch softer, at least that's my opinion of, or my, somewhat a explanation of why that might be.
Bob, in tequila enthusiasm, like people who are deep collectors and enjoyers of tequila, I feel like for a long time there was a sense that like the purest expression of tequila is a Blanco tequila, and I definitely carried that belief with me for a long time. I actually remember working one of the first events I ever did for Patrón. I got stationed at a station where my job was to pour Piedra and Burdeos to people at a South by Southwest event, and of course I sampled the wares and was like, I was like, oh, this is what aged tequila can taste like. Where do you sit on that spectrum? What do you think? How does the Reposado craze fit in that?
To be honest, this is the first I've heard that the Reposado is making that much of an impact or gaining that.
In the on-premise, for sure. In bars and restaurants.
On-premise for sure. And even like Julio was telling me years ago, like that's the most popular style in Mexico. I'm not sure how true that is. I don't know the figures from here, but you're saying like at least here, that's what people drink. But at least in on-premise I'll only speak for Miami, like that's what most of our guests at least are drinking right now.
I hear people asking for Repo and soda. They're asking for it in places they didn't used to live, not just margaritas, but they're asking for it in Reposado and soda. They're definitely asking for it in espresso martini. Like that's kind of amazing to me. And in your world, what are you seeing, Leslie?
Well, I have kind of a theory that was just popping through my mind. You know how on a menu with wine, people will buy if they're going for like the second cheapest or something like that. Like I wonder if they're like, ooh, I want to be a little fancy. Let's get the Repo. Or they just know that it's going to bring a different flavor. Like what you're getting with silver, but they want to, make it a little fancy.
You might be onto something. I had not actually ever thought of that, but that's definitely like well-known menu psychology. I think you're definitely right about the kind of approachability of the flavor, and people are sort of genetically engineered to like.
It's just a theory, but it makes sense, I think. Yeah.
Nate?
I think from my, brand side with bourbon and American whiskey, I think the rise in bourbon, I think the barrel aging, it's just a lot of people are getting more familiar with that. So I think maybe kind of, the inclination of both tequila and American whiskey at the same time just went hand in hand.
I think you're right, and I definitely think there's something there on the extreme and experimental end of aging. What's unique about Reposado is it doesn't exist in any other spirits category. In every other spirits category, the thing is either aged or it is not aged. It's not sort of aged. Scotch is all aged. Vodka is not
Brandy
aged.
maybe.
For the most part, not aged. Yeah. But nobody's really drinking Reposado of most things.
And no one else has a law of just the minimum of 1 year.
Right.
It's generally 2 to 3 as a minimum, and up from there.
Do you think it also could be that it's fun to say? I hear people mispronounce it. I hear Reposado all the time, and I wonder if people are picking it because it's like, I don't know.
Well, so I guess my theory in hearing this would possibly be that the recent rise and explosion of tequila, I'm sure a lot of people got into it on the Blanco stage, and now they're feeling adventurous and moving forward and wanting to try those next levels. Like, oh, if this is good, I like this. What's that going to taste like, right? And they're becoming more knowledgeable, so now they're working their way up the chain.
I guess.
Yeah, or if you want to look at it from the bourbon side, they're coming in at the higher levels and backing down because Blanco is not. It's too far off from what they're used to. In the enthusiast side, to answer your first question, what I think is happening more right now is the explosion of high proofs.
You're touching on what was going to be my next question is what are those other trends? Like Reposado is happening. It's like a macro trend in the enthusiasm world, like the collector universe. The people are in the online chat groups about this. What are the top few things that you're seeing?
Oh, it's high proofs, and it's special releases right now. It's just exploded, and anything allocated is instantly gone.
That's borrowing.
I think you're getting all the whiskey guys that got so burnt out on bourbon and like the overplayed stuff that a lot of them went. Because you're always trying to find the newest thing. So it's like, okay, maybe agave spirits, and those are all the same exact trend. So
maybe there's a camp like a lot of people love unaged, something completely,
some
people like aged, and think when we were talking about extra añejos and stuff yesterday, like I think they came along at a time when, you know, there was a certain time in history when, you know, like maybe people were really gravitating towards those like high-end scotches, bourbons, ryes, you know, cognacs, and it's just kind of, you know, these people love these kind of sipping style of spirits in general, but maybe then now they've kind of jumped over to things like tequila as well. And I think that, you know, the purists may not love those super aged ones, but I think they all have their place. You know
I
what I
think
mean?
Bob
No matter what.
hinted at something that I'm going to throw out there. There's this evolution of the consumer palate, and I think definitely whether they're coming from bourbon and going into like extreme aged or experimental aged tequila, or they were 20 years ago they were, you know, sipping or shooting Blanco tequilas. I feel like there's a couple of threads of those kind of like more established tequila enthusiasts. Some of them have gone into those things like Hyper Blanco and single casks and stuff like that. And I think a lot of them had said to hell with tequila, and they've gone into mezcal, raicilla, sotol, you know, like exploring the rest of the world of agave spirits. I am omnibibulous. I celebrate all of those things, and they are all on my bar at home.
Also in the bar, well, what Bob just said, the high proof spirits. That's a big thing in spirits across all categories in the bar world. People are really gravitating towards whether it's high proof gins, mezcals, ryes, and tequila's now a big one. People are really kind of enjoying those ones that are, you know, between, you know, 40, 45, 50%, because particularly in a cocktail, it can just punch through a lot of those kind of flavors, whether it's you're shaking things, adding soda, adding mixers, adding egg whites. I mean, you know, all these things that really could mask something that's a bit softer. I think they're really kind of shining through, and that's being.
What is that development doing from an operator's standpoint? Is it good? Is it an opportunity? Is it kind of is the tequila boom being a boom for the operators?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I mean, you know, obviously we have to all charge accordingly for it, but I think that people are willing to pay.
Yeah, that's where I was getting.
People are willing to pay premium for something that's great. You know what I mean? Especially if they know, or you tell them that it's kind of a special release, or maybe it's the value they're getting from that, whether it's special release, higher proof, more flavor, all those things can really kind of help educate someone in a subtle way. But go, wow, this bar's got this really cool, like, you know, 50% alcohol tequila that's really beautiful in this particular cocktail. That kind of makes sense to me. You know, now if I'm going to tell a guest something, it needs to be something that makes sense. You know what I mean?
From your vantage point, what do you either forecast, or what do you want to will into existence? What do you want to see in the tequila space that you haven't seen yet, or see more of that you're starting to see?
Good question. I'm going to pass it on to Bob.
Let the pros speak.
While you think about that, there's a cocktail that we didn't touch on, and that I want to know if this is a thing or if it's just my bias coming from where I come from. Spicy margarita. The last bar that I operated was on behalf of some owners, and when we were opening the bar, they were emphatic that we have a spicy margarita on the menu, and I was of the stay in your lane mindset. I'm making the menu, let me do my thing. And so I didn't put a spicy margarita on the menu, and I didn't even give the team a house spec for that when people ordered it, because I didn't drink it or like it. After our first weekend of service, I was like, oh shit, we need a spicy margarita, because that's what everybody who walks into this bar every third person seems to want a spicy margarita. That's been a minute, but I mean, you know, Texas has its own relation, A, with spice and B, with tequila. Do you see this drink? I'm coming around to you, Leslie, because I know you launched a spicy tequila or a drink modifier, but where do you see that? Is that happening? Does anybody want spicy margarita?
I think it's so part of, I don't know if not popular culture, it's just so part of the dynamic now of any bar.
People are going to order it anyway.
And there's myriad ways you can do it, you know, whether you're infusing chilies into it, which I think is really...
it's risky, yeah.
It's risky. Chili tinctures and stuff, you can make your own, whether it's something simple just like Tabasco. But I think that you should have some way of producing that drink, whatever that is. I think because we probably get asked for every 5 margaritas at Sweet Liberty, probably at least one of them is at least maybe 1 or 2 of those 5 are asked for a spicy.
So
it's a chili rim.
It's a standard in the canon now. You have to have it.
I think you have to be able to provide it somehow.
Yeah.
I was going to touch on the consistency, because I think as a bartender, without that house spec, you can have so many varying levels of spicy. But I think it's also hard, because when a guest order it and you're trying to convey, you know, how spicy do you want this? Like, you have to have a baseline to where you're going.
That's why having a tincture or something you can dash into it can make it a bit. You can tailor it to their spice level. If you just have a way that you can kind of add subtle drops, then you can ask them how spicy do you really want it, or bring them a little vial themselves. They can do it themselves. There's probably, like I said, there's myriad ways we can probably do it.
So I know you a couple of years ago launched Disco Inferno. Is that, I haven't tried it yet, so is that...
I have it with me. We can try later.
Oh, perfect. Tequila poppers, we need to make a menu.
Yeah, we basically launched it to make something that was easy to be consistent after. I love spicy margs, and I feel like sometimes they are just undrinkable. They're too spicy. Even if it's at a place that I usually get them, and I know that usually they're at my level, you just never know because peppers are unpredictable. So, yeah, we made ours very strong, so it's down to the drop. So you can start with, I always say 5 drops and then go up from there. But we wanted to make something really easy. I mean, I love Scrappy's Firewater as well. And I just wanted to make something that brought kind of like the Disco Cubes brand to the people. And that was fun to design and like looked good on a bar. But yeah, we've been getting great feedback from bars. People love it.
So I was going to ask you if the kind of the direction for that product is the on-premise, or if it's what some of my colleagues call the home premise.
Both. I mean, both are really popular. I feel like people who like things spicy like everything spicy, so it's kind of an easy market. We really sell well at non-alcoholic bottle shops, which is really interesting. But I think, yeah, it's just if people like things spicy, it's an easy way, or like drinks are the logical step for them.
In a world where people definitely have baby Tabasco, baby Cholula, and other spicy things, tahini that they carry around, do you foresee a world where people just have a portable bottle of Disco Inferno that
Ours is small, it's 1 ounce, so I keep it in my bag. And honestly, I keep one with me for if I'm out at a bar and I get a cocktail that I don't really like, it kind of saves it. It's like you can mask something that's too sweet, you can mask something that's not balanced by just making it spicy, and it just transforms it. So, yeah.
So spicy margarita, here to stay. The last thing I want to ask you guys, if you in different ways, but also in similar ways, you are all there's a word that we haven't that hasn't popped up, and it's deliberately so, and that's the E word, expert. I don't like to hear that word applied to me, but you all have expertise. You all have influence in the communities you serve. You used the word, Naren, earlier, softly educating. You were talking about softly educating consumers. I'm curious to get each of your take on kind of the role of the person, however you want to describe it, as a person influencing the community you sit in. To what extent do you believe that it is your responsibility to educate? To what extent do you accommodate trends, help propagate trends, or actively try to pump the brake on trends? I guess as gatekeepers in each of your respective ways, I'm curious to hear kind of your take on that responsibility as a gatekeeper, and both whether it's online or on premise. Do you have any thoughts on that, Leslie?
Can I go after someone?
Yeah. Naren, do you have any? I know you have a lot of thoughts on everything. So I'm sure you have something.
Yeah, sure. I do feel a responsibility to educate, probably mostly my staff at this stage of my career, and then give them the tools where they can then kind of pass that down in a way that they see fit. You know what I mean? I don't believe in kind of ramming knowledge down guests' throats unless they want to hear it, but at least if we have that information, we study it and we practice it, then when that question does come up, we're more equipped to be able to give them like an informed answer that makes sense, and they can go, okay, that's fairly enlightening. I have no idea that this tequila was made like that. So providing the information if the guest wants it. Some guests couldn't care less. Some are real nerds and just would love to know more. So trying to find that balance, I think, is where my head is at.
I think that mindset, it also kind of reflects the reality that we're in, of where the industry has matured to, where a craft cocktail bar definitely has people walking in and ordering tequila and soda, and may or may not be on the craft cocktail path. And you, by arming your staff with that knowledge and the maturity to recognize what that customer wants.
Yeah, and also understanding that people should drink drinks how they want to drink them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like if someone wants, a Piedra with whipped cream, like who am I to tell them to not drink it like that?
It might be something we need to try.
Another one for the list.
I feel like this cocktail menu tonight is really taking shape right now.
It's going to be a whole pop-up.
I think we're almost there. Yeah,
I am definitely guilty in my early bartending days of earning bad Yelp reviews, of being the guy who stood there lecturing someone for 30 minutes about a
I
Sazerac,
think we all were.
while the customer right next to that person wanted a Miller Lite, and I never got around to them or dismissed them.
I
or
think that's
whatever.
we all were, and I think that's just part of maturing as a bartender or hospitality professional.
Yeah.
And just giving people just, like whatever, however they want to drink things, as long as they enjoy it, who cares? Doesn't affect my life,
Yeah, there's this like spectrum between like strict dogmatism and drink what you like, and I think most people are not firmly in either of those places. But I'm just curious how you take the gatekeeper role, or even, not necessarily that you consider yourself that, but whatever this thing is.
I mean, I agree. I think I fell in the same role at a certain phase. I went through a certain phase where that lecture was taking place to people, and it was, at home or in conversations like this. And I think I firmly fall into the drink what you like category now. But and it's it's fairly ubiquitous now. Drink what you like, but know what you're drinking. Mm-hmm. But you can't force education either. So if they're asking questions, great. And I'm not selling. I'm not serving at an industry location. People that come over and we do tastings. You've been to a few tastings, and my big thing is let's just put a bunch of bottles out and do them blind, and then that way you can draw your own conclusions. And then if there's questions along the way, great, and let's see where it goes from there. So yeah, I don't know if the gatekeeping is correct for I'd like to think
maybe I chose the wrong word.
Well, I'd like to think I'm not. I mean, but I've been corrected numerous times before, and I will be again. So if I do end up doing that to people, I apologize now.
I think as wearing my bartender brand ambassador hat, I think there's a lot of value in listening and in paying attention to the guests and kind of drawing upon his points, is gauging more where they're at in their journey of either spirits or cocktails, and then tailoring my response to that. And you just learn so much more about somebody if you're just listening than if you're telling them at the end of the day. And I think I'm very guilty, as we said before, of being, in that 2010s to 2015 of over pretentious bartender. I'm going to teach you everything, and I'm not going to make that drink. I'm going to make you the way more complex one, to where I'm at now. And a lot of my memes and content is laughing at myself or laughing at kind of where we were and just having fun with things now, because I think that's kind of where bartending is at. And honestly, Sweet Liberty has always been that place where you have a Piña Colada and some nachos, and like you're having a good time. You're not there to get preached upon, but drawing upon the memes is just taking a look at the space that bartending is in and just having fun with it instead of overanalyzing everything.
My area of expertise is very specific, but one of the reasons I started Disco Cubes was because I was seeing a few kind of failure ice cubes. Mm-hmm. Like one specific one that I had a memory of was it on the menu said it was a lavender ice cube. I was very excited about whatever that meant. Mm-hmm. And it just turned out they used a king cube mold, filled it with water, and like sprinkled dried lavender on top. So within 1 second of it being in the drink, there's lavender pieces all over your lips. And just the experience overall, I was like picking it out, like swallowing some. It was awful. Wow. And I just remember being like, they should obviously make it in layers, or they should do this or that. And then it was at a great cocktail spot. And it just hadn't really taken off yet. Like only the best of the best bars were even using clear ice. And so I think I love to sit at the bar and talk with bartenders, where obviously I'm usually a guest. I have never been a bartender. But so it's almost like in reverse, where sometimes I'll find myself trying to educate bartenders on their ice program and just kind of give them tips of what I think they could do or change. Obviously, that's changed a lot over time now. I think ice is a pretty central part to a lot of the menus.
It's been a revolution,
since it has
started.
But yeah, it's fun because it's such it's something that for such a long time was pretty back burner, and now I think it's a key element.
The consumer. Home premise, home bartender evolution or revolution of the last decade or so. It's really wild. It was unimaginable to me, even as a person who was 15 years ago trying to teach home, cocktail classes and spirits education for home bartenders. I'm really impressed at how much they've taken their assignment seriously, and to the fact that such like micro specific sites as yours can exist and thrive.
Yeah, well, I think that making cocktails at home is such a fun, easy hobby where I think a lot of people have almost lost the art of having a hobby. And so when it's something like cooking or making a drink that's actually beneficial to you and your friends, rather than everyone wants to paint, but who's painting and who's benefiting? But making your hobby something strange like ice is a fun party trick, and it's beneficial to you and your friends.
It's also beautiful to behold. And I think, and I believe this for a long time, that the cocktail world, the bartending world, does not exist without really like this whole ecosystem that various of this group represent. You cannot really be a bartender if customers don't come sit at your bar. You cannot be a brand just selling to either of those. You can't really be a great, successful bartender if nobody is out there. It used to be writing in print magazines or whatever about your quality. And really, the success of your bar now depends on the fact that influential people will walk in and post something nice about your thing. And so I really believe that we are all the bartender community, whether you work on the brand side, the consumer side, the enthusiast side, influence, or on-premise operator side, or if you just make fun of things all day, like Nick and sell lapel pens. These are all like crucial functions to the industry. As we wrap up here, I kind of want to. I'd love to hear just your quick take on what you've seen sort of since we've been here the last 36 hours or so. Any kind of single takeaway from your visit here? For me, a lot of times I hear people say they came for the tequila, but they stayed for the compost. That's me sort of summarizing what they've said. Anybody have anything that I don't know that you saw or were impressed by or excited about?
The scale, just the scale of everything, the production, and I mean it's beautiful. It's an amazing grounds. That goes without saying. But just the sheer scale of the operation of what is being made was just impressive.
Yeah, you have to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
I was going to say something along the same lines. I think that, there's a lot of people in the industry that kind of rag on the big brands because they're big brands, I guess. They're just these multinationals, and they're just in it to get rich and stuff. And I just think that when you come here, and I've been lucky to be here a few times, and you come here and actually see the integrity in the production, and being able to operate, like you said yesterday, on a way that is kind of like small scale in terms of the, artisanal methods that you're kind of upholding, but doing it at such a grand scale is kind of mind-boggling to me that still is like even actually a possibility, so being able to kind of see that again and just kind of just understand that what you're doing here actually does have, integrity, and you're still upholding those traditions of not just how Patrón started, but how any of the methods, I guess, that tequila started with.
It's an exciting time to be in this business because, we have been doing this for 30 years now of growing by replication, not automation, as we say. But I think it's like a trend now. I think it's undeniably a trend. That the operators on the or producers on the craft end of the spectrum are finally getting recognized, and there's bars that literally will only sell tequilas made these ways, and that's just it's an exciting thing to be in the tequila business right now. Not just because of how we make tequila, but how people in the consumer space and the trade space are viewing how tequila is made. They finally care. They're finally paying attention. It finally matters, and I think that's exciting.
For me, the takeaway is the people. I mean, just walking around and looking at, the common person that works here, walking down the sidewalk, I think they're all smiling. Everybody said hello, and maybe that's a reflection of the community here, or the town, or the culture, but everybody seems happy. And I think the proverbial bow, so to speak, is, when we went to that final bottling room and everybody's working and waving at us.
It's a whole vibe in there.
It's I want to work there for a day and hear the gossip, but I don't know. You just get a very authentic and genuine feel out of it, and in the way that Patrón is supporting the community makes me feel really good, especially after going into town and seeing all the people and seeing those bars and just I don't know, the impact it can have is really special.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking similarly to everything. Literally was thinking about how happy everyone was. So I think my overall take is just how much passion is in every single level, from the day-to-day workers to the long-term dedication to making sure that every step of the process is so fine-tuned. But yeah, everything is just really passionate, and you can tell in every level, from the menus to the production to everyone that works here being really invested, and then Patrón as a company caring about the community.
Well, on that note, I think the highest tribute we could pay to the 2,500 folks who you got to meet this week making tequila is to taste the fruits of their work. So on behalf of the whole team here at La Casona and the Copper Bar and Hacienda Patrón, thank you so much.
Thank you, Devin.
For being here.
Cheers, Bob. Great to meet you.
You as well.
Cheers, Ozzy. Cheers.
Cheers.
Salud, guys. Salud.
I would be remiss if I didn't direct people to academiapatron.com and at Academia Patrón on social. We spent all that time talking about chilies, and I buried the lead. Roberto and I did a whole series on chilies, and we wrote a 106-page book on chilies.
Amazing.
And their history and their propagation and their use in cocktails.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, same.
I'll see if Robbie has a copy of it and get it for you. We'll fix that in the edit, guys. Thank you all. This is
El mundo es el mejor.